That's Breakout, Swing Out Sister on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. It's 8 minutes past 6 and this is Lincolnshire Kitchen. And this evening's guest is Jason O'Rourke. He's a head teacher from the Washingborough Academy in Lincolnshire. Now, I've long been interested in Japanese school lunches. They've been on my radar for a while. I've seen reports about them. I thought that's really interesting. And they are led by food and nutrition education. It's a vital part of the Japanese child's early education, apparently. It begins in nursery school, and children are taught the Japanese view that what you put into your body matters a great deal in how you think and feel throughout the day and how you go about your life. And they have very unhurried lunch times. They take a more leisurely sort of route to eat their food. They don't rush it. They're given time to enjoy it. And the children also serve one another and they clear up, which reinforces the Japanese culture of self-sufficiency. Now, I've always found that interesting, and I've always thought that would look like a good example. And Japan, incidentally, also has the lowest rate of obesity in children as well. So when I heard about a school in Lincolnshire, right here, right in our county, which was doing something similar, I was intrigued. I wanted to learn more. And it's, as you'll discover when we chat to my guest, it's taken very seriously. And the gentleman that's here as my guest is very knowledgeable as well. So, Jason, welcome. Or should I call you Mr. O'Rourke? I'm really guilty.
No, Jason's fine. Jason's fine.
And welcome to Lincolnshire Kitchen.
Thank you.
It's such a big topic and you're so passionate about what you do, but just take us back to grassroots. Why do we need to pay attention to what children are eating in school?
Because we have a problem at the moment in this country. We have a problem with obesity in general, but specifically childhood obesity. The figures are quite startling. You have children coming in at reception, and this is nationally, with 1 in 5 children being overweight or obese. And throughout the time that they're in primary school, so the 6 or 7 years they're in primary school, by the time they reach the age of 11 at year 6, nationally, that goes to 1 in 3 children overweight or obese. Now that is worrying in all types of levels because it actually affects children's health and well-being. We have £10 billion at the moment spent by the NHS on type 2 diabetes. 5-6 years ago, we had no children under the age of 16 acquiring that disease. It's not a disease that you catch, it's one that you acquire through your lifestyle choices. And now, 2 years ago, we had over 560 children under the age of 16 that had type 2 diabetes, and that is going to affect them for the rest of their lives and their health and well-being. So we are really conscious of the fact that we need to educate the whole child. It's not just the academic and the English and the maths. It's so that they can live full and rewarding lives. And learning about their food, learning about what they're putting in their body is a really key aspect to them.
So you're teaching them essentially a life skill.
Oh, definitely.
Alongside money management and practical skills as well.
Exactly. You know, it's one of those things that everybody eats, okay? Everybody eats hopefully at least 3 times a day. So we all have that connection with it. And if we can teach our children the benefit of eating healthy food, how that can support you and your health and well-being, and I think that's part of our job as educators.
So how long have you been at the school, and why did you take this approach? Because I've been reading all the notes about it. This is an approach that you don't just pick it up once a week for an hour and put it down again. It's running through the whole of your curriculum, isn't it? The whole of what you're doing. Yeah,
it is. Of course, we do lots of other things on top of that, but it is one of our core aspects. It's one of the backbones that we have for the school. I've been at the school now 9 years. And why we took it on, because it is something that the children have a real connection with. They can learn. When children are learning, they don't know they're learning. That's the kind of the golden bullet in education. So we wanted to use this as a catalyst so they can learn through maths. When they're doing the recipes, they can scale up the recipes. They're using percentages, they're using measurement. When they're writing about the recipes, when they're doing reviews of the food that they're tasting, they're using their English skills, their geography skills when they're looking at ingredients from other countries, history skills when we're looking at the potato. potato. Lincolnshire famous for its potato. We can look at how it was brought over in the Tudor times, and how its growth in popularity. So there's lots and lots that can be learned through the medium of food.
And what's their comprehension of where food comes from? And I'm not sort of just picking on the children in your particular school, because I'm sure they're fairly indicative of children throughout the country. But what's their understanding? I mean, these horror stories that you hear about children thinking that, I don't know, that the potatoes are made out of cow, for example. You hear these horror stories. Is there any sort of grounding in that? What are their comprehension of where food comes from?
It is, nationally, it is quite depressing.
No.
It's just their lack of awareness of it. It's that lack of knowledge of it. They're not getting, for want of a better word, their hands dirty with where they're getting the food from. All food now, virtually people get it from supermarkets. In a recent survey by the British Nutritional Foundation, nearly a third of 5 to 7-year-olds thought that cheese came from a plant. And not an animal. And while 1 in 4 of the older children thought the same, so that's 7 to 11-year-olds, and then 1 in 5 infants believe that animals provide us with pasta and that fish fingers are made of chicken and fruit pastels are one of your 5 a day. Now this is really, this disassociation with food, this disconnect with something that they are using every day, they're participating with every day, needs to be addressed, I think.
It's a massive disconnection. And when you told me that earlier, I just didn't know what to say or think. To think that, pasta comes from an animal.
Yes.
That's really disturbing. And when you look at other cultures like Italy in particular, they are quite keen on the children helping with the cooking.
Yes.
So those children are making the pasta. I'm not suggesting that here we suddenly start making pasta from scratch, but a comprehension of where it comes from and what's in pasta. See, I'm really quite disturbed about that. And cheese growing on trees, is that what you said?
Yes, that was one of the issues that came out, and many others as well, and okay, on a national aspect. So when you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, children, their knowledge, their experience of food is not what it used to be in years gone by. So we need to, as educators, make sure that our children have got those skills and that knowledge so that they can lead better lives with it.
Now, you see, I'm not a parent or a grandparent, but I'm interested, as listeners will know, about food and where it comes from and our relationship and cooking. And it just fills me with a bit of sort of hopelessness to think that actually in future years, the people that may be sort of helping me or caring for me or whatever, or shaping the restaurants, the businesses, growing food, etc., are so disconnected from the act of cooking.
Yes.
That they think that food, that they only sort of buy food in a tray and heat it up. Mm-hmm. And I find that really rather sort of sad. I find it quite depressing in a way, because you learn a lot about the past through food, I think, and you connect with yourself through food. To feel hungry is a human emotion, isn't it? And to understand that what you eat affects how you feel, how you look, how you perform. If it didn't affect how you perform, athletes would be eating all sorts of random things, wouldn't they? And I found that really sort of quite distressing. And it's a subject that's been of interest to me for about 20 years, when a health visitor friend of mine told me that she went to visit a young parent, and the young parent was deep frying a bread roll for her child's lunch. There was nothing in it. She was just deep frying a bread roll. And that was the child's food.
Right.
And I found that really kind of just quite distressing. And these are things you can't comprehend that somebody might do. But it sounds to me like it is actually a big problem.
It is, I think, and it's not just in the UK. There's a lot of issues around the world with childhood obesity and people's relationship with food as well. I think we live in a very fast culture at present, and as you said before, there's lots of ready meals around. You can stick a meal in a microwave for 3 minutes, and there it's ready. And people aren't getting that sensory indication with food, that sensory approach to food, of the cooking of it, the smelling of it, the tasting of it, the feeling of it. And so those skills that we had many years ago are starting to go. People aren't finding that they have the time to do that.
And in slight defence of that, things are different to what they were perhaps 50 years ago. People are strapped for time a lot more,
yes.
I think. Are you teaching children that, or your pupils, that actually you don't need to spend 3 hours to cook a meal? You can cook a meal in 20 minutes, half an hour.
Exactly. The dishes that the children are making are simple dishes with very fresh ingredients. Some of them not much heat going on with them at all. We started that off initially when we first started the cooking with no heat involved. We were making a lot of salads, we were putting lots of fresh ingredients together. And children know that, within 20, 25 minutes, they have a fantastic, healthy dish that they've made themselves. Now, if they've made it themselves, they're more curious to try that. And we also connect that with the growing culture we have at the school and the allotments that we have and the orchards that we have, so that children are fascinated with, well, I've grown that, I've looked after that, what does it taste like?
Right, we'll chat more in a moment. Now, this is Lincolnshire Kitchen. My name's Amy Claridge, and Jason O'Rourke is my guest this evening. He's the head teacher at Washingborough Academy, with a very interesting approach to educating the children about food and cooking and eating. That's Back to Black, Amy Winehouse on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. It's 23 minutes past 6. Now, earlier I mentioned about, it's obviously Easter this weekend, which was best simnel cake or hot cross buns. At the moment, 11% of people saying simnel cake and 89% people saying hot cross buns. If you'd like to have your sort of thoughts on that, you're very welcome to. You can text 81333, start your message with LN, or indeed, if you've got any comments to make to my guest this evening, Jason O'Rourke, and perhaps even to share your memories of when you were at school and what food was like in those days. I've been trying to rack my brain to remember what my school dinners and my school food was like, and I can't remember the cookery lessons, and which is awful, really. But I do remember making a cake for my dog, which is a terrible thing to admit, but there you go. Now, Jason O'Rourke, he's my guest. He's the head teacher from Washingborough Academy. And Jason, we were talking before the travel about why you're doing and driving what you're driving and everything, but all the motives behind it. But just explain, what you've got there, because you've got outdoor space. You're growing as well, aren't you?
We are, yes. We're blessed with a lot of outdoor space. Saying that, this type of food education can happen in an inner city school. Although we have great grounds, and what we've got in our grounds, we have vegetable beds for every class, raised beds for the classes. We also have a Lincolnshire heritage apple orchard.
Have you?
Yeah, we planted that about 8 or 9 years ago, 22 varieties of Lincolnshire apple. I went out to local businesses and organisations and asked if they would sponsor it. And for the sake of £18, which they all gave up readily, we then created an orchard out of some waste ground that we had there.
Yeah.
So we have apples local apples such as Ingles Pippin from Grimaldeby near Louth, Peasgood Nonsuch from Grantham, and one called Bolingbroke Beauty, which originated from Eden Farms in Old Bolingbroke. Now, it's fantastic for children to know where their food is coming from, their food that is being served in our kitchen, and also the food that we're using for our food education lessons with the apples is coming straight from the school grounds.
So are your children sort of, when they're ready to pick, they're picking apples,
Yes.
taking them to the kitchen?
They are.
And then cooking with them?
They are with the food education lessons, or just tasting the apples, knowing that there are different varieties of apples as opposed to the ones we get in supermarkets.
This is it. When I was a child growing up, there was only one kind of apple, and that was a Granny Smith.
Yes.
And I remember which was there was a French Granny Smith was grown here, isn't it? I can't quite remember, but I can remember a French variety.
Golden Delicious.
Golden Delicious, was that grown in France back in the 70s?
Yeah.
Because I remember the stickers which said Le Crunch on them, and there was only really and the cooking apples. There were 3 types of apple as far as I knew when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But it's lovely to think as well that the children are going out into what's essentially an orchard.
Yes.
And seeing them growing, but also perhaps connecting them more to the county. So they may be out and about with their parents, and they go past Grantham, and they say, "Oh, that's where our apples are from." That's lovely.
It is, and also I think it's good for children to see that apples aren't always the perfect specimens that you get in Tesco's and Sainsbury's and other supermarkets. That they do have blemishes on them, and the fact that some of those rustic apples taste so much better than all the shiny ones as well that we have in the shops.
Yeah.
So on top of that, we've created a herb wheel as well, a very big herb herb wheel. A local gardener came in and helped design that, and those herbs are used in our commercial kitchen and also in our food education lessons. We've just created 1,000 square metres of vegetable gardens that's going to serve our kitchen. Can't be completely self-sufficient, but we're trying to get there. We have an outdoor wood-fired pizza oven. We've just built a polytunnel, big polytunnel for our tomatoes and our chilies, and also beehives as well.
Because you mentioned about how you don't have to be a rural school with lots of land in order to be able to do this. The beehives are a great example because you can put them on a roof, can't you?
You can. And there is a programme called Edible Playgrounds as well, which works with schools within inner cities, and there are lots of innovative ways that you can grow things with children in playgrounds that only have tarmac and concrete.
And as a school, I guess, is growing your own produce, is that saving you money? Is that helping your budget?
It is. It's not. It's not a big thing that will help with that. Though when we're making on Tuesdays, we have a snack shack, so children come into our children's kitchen, which is all low level, triple glazed ovens, induction hobs, and they make a snack for the following day for children to buy at 50p.
So you've got a special kitchen that's at child height.
Yes.
So it's a little bit like me going into my normal height kitchen, and they've got a child version of that.
We have lower worktops.
That's not only amazing, that's also adorable. Just so cute.
Yeah.
I just want to sit in there all day long and it's really rather lovely.
So we're looking at the produce around the grounds that we can use in that. The children are ordering the food. If we need some food from shops, they're looking at how much it costs. Then they're making that meal to be sold, or that snack to be sold at the next day's playtime for 50p, and then they're seeing the profit margins that they can make. If you're spending a couple of weeks ago, I think we spent about £3.60 on the ingredients for the snack shack, and we got a profit of about £38 on that. And that money then goes back into our food education pot, so it's used again to support if we need further materials, if we need further resources. It kind of serves itself.
And how do you go? And this is probably, I hope this isn't too much of a sort of a tricky question, really, or a bit cheeky, but we hear a lot about schools and various services being sort of finding things tough financially. How do you go about getting the permission and the funding to put polytunnels up? And how do you get control of your own budgets? How does it work? Because it sounds wonderful, but can every school do this?
I think this is part of children's education. This is part of their learning. Yeah. Now, our budgets are there to support children's well-being, their growth, their education. Now, all of those things, I can argue very strongly that they are improving children's outcomes with the cross-curricular approach that we put to our food education, our growing culture. And the children are developing and they are progressing academically as well as socially, as well as with their health as well. So yes, you can justify it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I was sort of reading up today to get prepared. Normally schools have contractors in to do the food. They have contracting caterers in to provide the meals. You got rid of yours, didn't you?
We did, yeah.
And then you've actually got your own member of staff, is that right? Yeah,
we employ our own chef and kitchen team who are absolutely fantastic, absolutely great team, really creative, really innovative with the food that they produce every day. We also supply other schools as well. And when we started off, we had no contractors, we had no suppliers. So our aim was to get the best suppliers, the organic suppliers, the local produce, and we started to enrol on the Soil Association's catering mark. And 2 years later, we achieved their gold catering mark, and we're the only in-house school provider in the UK that has that gold catering mark, which recognises where we're sourcing our food from, the quality of the food that we're producing on a daily basis.
That's remarkable, really, isn't it? And your chef, is it a he?
Yes,
it's a he.
Michael. Yeah.
So Michael, is he a trained chef, or is he a teacher that does a bit of cooking? I mean, what's his sort of?
No, he is a trained chef, got years and years of experience in the catering trade.
And it must be quite sort of quirky to him, because suddenly all of his customers I mean, you're obviously in charge of him, and you're not 4 years old or anything, but all his little customers are there with their own sets of likes and dislikes. So his sort of audience has changed completely. How does he find it?
He is. I think, it maybe took a bit, because they're very honest. Children, they'll tell you if they don't like it, and then they won't tell you if they don't particularly like it. But I think with we have fantastic salad bars. First put that out, and children weren't really approaching it because they hadn't had that experience before. And now it's empty virtually every day with that. Michael makes his own bread every day as well, so we make wholemeal bread for the children. So that is on offer for them. We pay a lot of attention to the children's puddings as well, so we have a lot of fresh fruit for the children to eat. It's a fantastic variety. We have meat-free Monday, we have fish Friday, we do theme days to do with the themes that we do in schools. So we've had when we've done alongside World War II, and we had a rationing day, so they were eating food that people ate during World War II. We've linked up with other cultures as well. So this
is the interesting thing. You mentioned about teaching sort of geography and other cultures through the food, and you mentioned about talking about rationing, World War II rationing. Yeah. Which I guess if you actually kind of make them go through the experience in a way, it's going to bring it home to them all that, yes, they really did only have one egg between X people. And it continued for many years after the end of the war, didn't it, World War II? Yeah.
It did. And having that experience at lunchtime, instead of just reading a rationing card, instead of just reading about it in a book, but actually experiencing that and that plate there, and this is what you had for the day.
There wasn't a great deal of food, was there? That you had to have the skills to cook, or you didn't eat very well at all, did you?
Exactly.
Well, we want to talk about the international aspect of what you do as well, but I'm going to give you a short rest, I think, and then we'll talk a little bit more in a moment. Now, this is Lincolnshire Kitchen. My name's Amy Claridge, and we're chatting with Jason O'Rourke, for the head teacher of Washingborough Academy, a school that is actually a case study for the government's National Child Obesity Programme. So a very, very interesting thing happening right here in the county. Wham on BBC Radio Lincolnshire, I'm your man. It's 22 minutes to 7 and this is Lincolnshire Kitchen, and we're slightly unusual this week. We're looking at a Lincolnshire school which is just making great waves in the education of children regarding food and eating. And my guest is Jason O'Rourke. He's the head teacher of Washingborough Academy. Now, Jason, you're a case study. Your school is a case study for the government's childhood obesity programme, and you're on the government website, which I just think is fantastic. And you were telling me there's only 2 of you on there.
Well, 2 schools that are used as case studies on the website, yes, and other organisations as well that are doing great work trying to reduce childhood obesity levels.
I'm really kind of pleased, and I feel slightly fluffy about it, that there are schools there throughout the country that are looking at this case study and looking at what you're doing and being inspired by it, and using it as a way to perhaps change what they do, because you are fairly unusual, I would have thought, though I guess some schools are doing parts of what you're doing. But you must feel quite proud of that, really, aren't you?
Yeah, we were. It was lovely to be recognised. We were contacted by the Department of Health, and they'd heard of things that we're doing through conferences that were spoken at, and wanted us to, when that initially came out, wanted us to write up a piece. They came and went through it as well, and photos and videos of the things that we're doing that is making a difference to children's awareness of what they're putting in their body will have an effect on their health.
And I wanted also to get a better understanding of the international aspect of what you're doing. You are travelling overseas, you're seeing what other schools do, you're learning from them, and they're learning from you as well. Can you just explain to us where you've been and what you're up to? And
Yes. We've been very fortunate in getting Erasmus Plus funding. It's through elements of the British Council.
What is Erasmus Plus?
It's an EU funding grant that you can put in to work with schools in Europe on shared programmes. Now, because of our interest in food, we created a programme called Read, Write, Eat with schools in Elblanc in Poland and schools in just outside Novo Mesto in Slovenia. And what we were doing is looking at cultural stories, our own cultural stories, local cultural stories, as in Lincolnshire, and wider ones, and changing them and adapting them to put a food element to them, and also writing shared recipes that we have in Lincolnshire. So we made plum loaf, and we sent over the recipe to the colleagues in Poland and Slovenia. They also shared their recipes. So there was pierogi from Poland and buckwheat bread from...
What's pierogi?
Pierogi is like little parcels of food. Lots of cultures have them, like little wontons, but they're
like ravioli,
yeah, exactly.
or sort
exactly.
of Chinese dumplings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with the Slovenian connection, they do a lot of recipes with buckwheat, not something that we use regularly in this country. So they shared their recipe for buckwheat bread, and we made that in our school. We made cooked some of it in the commercial kitchen in the ovens there. We cooked some of it in our wood-fired pizza oven as well. And then the children were learning about those cultures through their taste and through their experiences of the food that those children in those countries experience as well, and vice versa. So a really, really powerful way of children getting a hands-on experience of different cultures.
So you go over and you do what you do, as you've explained, and you come back and you share the visit with the children.
Exactly. And we write a blog every time we go over. We've got the visitors from Poland and Slovenia coming over in May to visit us, so 4 teachers from Poland.
I was going to ask if they come back, because I understand, and I'm interested. I'm pleased you mentioned the fact that you get funding for this, because I was wondering how on earth you fund all these trips.
No, it's external funding. You write a very comprehensive bid for this, pages and pages, to say how it's going to benefit the children, what the outcomes are going to be, and then it goes off to the powers that be, and they come back yes or no. And we were very fortunate in getting, I think, over €40,000 to fund this 2-year project that we've got at the moment. And we've just been very fortunate in getting on. We didn't write the bid, the Soil Association did, with links with organisations in Denmark and the Czech Republic as well. And that was around school food, because what's happening in Denmark is absolutely incredible.
Right, yeah. Now, when you said Denmark, I was quite my interest piqued particularly in that. What are they up to there? Because that strikes me as quite an efficient nation. What are their schools like?
Fantastic, really, really good. Very similar to our schools in the makeup of them and in the ages of the children that go to the different sections of the schools. But the area that we went to, Svendborg, 80% of the school food that the children eat there is organic, and it's coming from not within further than 10-mile radius of the schools. Absolutely fascinating that they can be providing schools with that amount of organic food, those children knowing where the food comes from, going to visit those farms as well, and seeing it firsthand. You have secondary children, a class a week cooks for their colleagues, cooks for their peers. They make the lunch for their peers. They prepare the food.
Like the Japanese model.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And then they clean down the kitchen afterwards. So, and that responsibility that they have to feed their friends, a fantastic thing, really is.
When you go to these other schools, like the ones you're mentioning, Denmark, Slovenia, Poland, taking your school out of the equation, because yours it seems to be unusual. How do you feel about what we generally do on an average basis here compared to the other countries? Are you a bit embarrassed? What are we miles behind? Are we ahead of some? And
we're ahead of some. Scandinavian countries are, I would say, 2, 3, 4 years ahead of us in what they do. You take Finland, for example, that academically they're always top of the PISA scales, so they're always ones that we're being told by the government we need to be aspiring to. Now, the Finnish government support all school food for children throughout the whole of the time they're in school, so they fund that. So there is a lot of support going in. There's a lot of things going on in the background that supports that, and they're very, very keen on local produce, on children knowing about their own culture through the food that they eat. We were experienced that in Norway, where the government were quite shocked at the fact that children didn't eat cloudberries. They didn't know what cloudberries were.
Yeah.
They didn't eat reindeer. And that is part of their cultural background. And so they wanted to stop the Americanization of their children's food by eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, and make sure that children in schools experienced the food that is representative of their culture. And that's a similar type of thing that happens in Japan as well.
So what is the perception of us?
Quite poor.
No.
I know, I'm sorry.
No.
I know,
Oh,
just from experiences that I've had, I think I remember seeing a PowerPoint from some Chinese students and summing up our food culture, and the two photos that they showed were fish and chips and Victoria sponge.
Nothing wrong with either of those.
No,
as a part of
not
a
on the same plate.
As a part of a balanced diet,
Yes,
because
exactly.
you cannot stop the British eating fish and chips, but as a part of a balanced diet. See, that's and then what? And so they're not very impressed with us, by the sounds of it.
No, and there is that kind of, I think, the comments about, the variety of food and the freshness of the food, and there is a lot of processed food going on, and it's not like that all over the place. So I acknowledge that, but it's quite. You don't want that impression coming from when you go overseas. You want to kind of move that on, because it's not always like that.
What do your parents think? Because I must admit, if I was about to start a family, I think I'd be moving to your catchment area, because I would love my children to have gone. If I was going to have a family, I would love your school. I would love the sound of it. What do your parents think of you and your foodie ways? Are they supportive?
Yeah, they are. On the whole, they are. I think they appreciate what we're doing, how we're looking at the whole child, and supporting the children with that, making them very aware of what they're putting into their bodies and the fact that it is making a difference to them. And also, we had a fantastic Grandparents' Day last Monday, where grandparents came in and helped the younger children, our foundation stage children, with growing things in our gardens. So they're helping with putting the seeds in. We were digging up winter vegetables, and the grandparents, the comments they were making after, saying this is what education should be. Children getting their hands dirty, really feeling the soil, really getting that sense of where their food comes from.
Well, this is Lincolnshire Kitchen. My guest is Jason O'Rourke. He's the head teacher from the Washingborough Academy, and we'll chat more with him in a moment. My guest this evening, Jason O'Rourke. Jason, how's your mint at your school?
Very good, actually. We have about 3 or 4 different varieties of mint in our herb garden.
Have you?
We have got them in pots because they do spread rapidly.
No, I let mine spread. I let it do what it likes. You can never have enough mint.
No, good point. We have things like chocolate mint, spearmint, and again, it's experiencing it with children, seeing there are different varieties within a few leaves that look the same.
See, that in itself is a wonderful thing, because mint just perks up everything, doesn't it?
It does.
And it's quite exciting, I think. It's there and it's free. And look what it costs you in a supermarket.
I know. And just put boiling water on it, a lovely mint tea, really refreshing mint tea. Or
Yes.
put it on,
Very
potatoes.
Moroccan, as I'm sure you've
frittatas, it's
told
lovely.
them.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, because you've been a fantastic guest, and I've only got a minute left. Just tell us about Flavour School, if you can sum that up.
Yeah, it's an organisation that we've set up along with some other interested parties, writers and academics, about teaching children in the early years and in Key Stage 1 about food through their senses. Knowledge of food determines someone's future food preferences. It happens not on a logical level, but through your senses, through your touch and your sight and your smells and your hearing as well as taste. And so the sessions that we set up on a weekly basis with our younger children is exploring food by using their senses, and through doing that, we're not forcing the children to eat something, but 95% of the time those children want to do it because, again, they're curious about it.
They are, and they are brave and receptive to new things, aren't they?
Of course, yeah.
Right, just tell us very quickly, if people want to have a look at what you're doing, what's your website address?
Well, our school website address is www.washingborough.academy.org. If you want to know more about Flavour School, flavourschool.org.uk.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. You've been an excellent guest.